Hello and welcome to The Long Couch. My name's Carl. I'm joined by Mel.
Hello, hello, hello. How you beautiful people doing?
And on this fine evening, we will be discussing cartoon theories. So this is a topic that was brought up in our very first episode. And we're circling back. And tonight we're going to be
Finally
diving in to the deep, dark world of cartoon theories.
This entire concept and topic is kind of like the golden boy of YouTube. Everyone's done a video on twisted, dark, or even sometimes not dark, but mostly it's dark. You know, most of the time it's like, oh, turns out they're all dead. Every character is dead.
This episode's going to stand out a little bit because I went out of my way to avoid overly dark
Is it because I complained about it last time? You brought it up, and I was like, I fucking hate those theories.
They're just not that interesting to me.
They're not interesting. The big one is Rugrats. They're like, oh, everyone except for Angelica's dead. And it's like, whatever. Who cares?
I have been immersed in this research for the past week, and I could not get away from that one. That one was on every single list. And like Ash from Pokemon's in a coma, or Ed, Edd n Eddy is Purgatory.
I hate theories. I hate cartoon theories that there's no evidence for, but it's like there's no evidence against it. Like, oh, Ash is in a coma for all of Pokemon. Okay.
I mean, the evidence there is like, oh, the tone of the show changes, and it explains all the whimsical stuff after the first episode where he got electrocuted. Anyway, I didn't get into some of those, so if you're looking for that, this is not the episode for that.
You could say that about any. Frasier from the show Frasier is actually in a coma from the first episode. Everything that happens is fake.
Everything's a dream.
Columbo is in a coma the whole fucking series. I don't know.
He's already dead. It's hell. It's purgatory. It's all bullshit. Okay. I did try to pick some theories that had a little bit of meat to them, and I'm gonna keep calling these theories because that's just what they're called. But really, they're just cartoon hypotheses. If you want to be that actually guy.
There we go. We get specific with our terminology and nomenclature here.
I tried to avoid ones that were just pure speculation or just like basically fan fiction headcanon.
This is why they pay you the big bucks.
Right. A lot of these I still think are totally stupid, but at least I felt they were worth discussing. And we might debunk some of these, or we might think like, oh, this is plausible, or this is kind of like a fun hypothesis about the show, or just like an alternate way to think of this show or this character or what have you. So let's get into it.
Well, I'm excited.
The first one is actually, we're going to start off with a big one, actually. So this is the SpongeBob SquarePants skin theory. So this comes from a YouTube video by Doug Wolver, and it's an hour and 11 minutes. I watched it twice for the purpose of this video.
I've seen it once.
Okay.
No, I've seen it twice too.
Yeah, so you're also familiar with this one.
I like this one a lot, actually.
This is a very popular video, just a popular theory, and it's interesting because it doesn't really point to some kind of conclusion. It more just points out a series of similarities and reoccurring things in the show. So let me lay it out before we get into it. This is basically a theory that revolves around, in the early seasons of SpongeBob, there was kind of a reoccurring theme or joke or gag that revolves around the removal of skin, or characters wearing other characters' skins, or they're wearing costumes, or have fake body parts, stuff like that. And this theory really goes into it and points out multiple examples, as we can see here. These are only 4 of them, but this is like over an hour-long video where they just talk about all the instances of skin, either wearing a costume, wearing someone else's skin, having your skin removed, having parts of your body removed, being revealed as, another creature underneath your overlay of skin. So it's very strange. What exactly is behind the skin theory, Mel?
Okay, so I like this one a lot because, one, it really does it's a very educated and intentional observation on the show, right? But I think you can think of it 2 ways. is one from a storyboard, like conceptual level. I think that it's just kind of sort of like an absurdist joke to like, you know, have a fish wear a fish costume, or like it's kind of it's like wacky silly for, you know, SpongeBob to think it's, you know, like it's plankton, rip off a guy's head and there's just like a smaller head underneath, and it's like, oh, I was wearing a mask or like a human head, or you know, a guy's face gets ripped off and he's like, what the fuck, man? Like that's absurdist humor that I think a lot of kids would probably laugh at, because it's like it's like shocking, but like it's funny, it's goofy. So I think from a storyboard level, this was not intentional. However, I think that from a humor level, it was super, super intentional, because it happens so much. Like, it's not like it's a one-off thing that we're cherry picking here. Like this, like people wearing skin or having their skin removed, or all of this stuff is super common in those early seasons of SpongeBob. So I think that it was kind of like a joke and like a gag that they kept in a recurring sense. But it does have greater implications about the citizens of Bikini Bottom, because they all seem to be very okay with this.
You think the writers were knowingly doing this repeatedly? Like this was an in-joke for them?
I think they were knowingly doing this repeatedly as a gag, but I don't think that they meant to imply that there was some greater sort of, you know, general ethos in Bikini Bottom regarding the wearing and fabrication of skin to such an extent that you were altering your appearance for the sake of altering it. Like you were altering it to pass it off as real or something like that. Like I don't think it was meant to necessarily be a canonical narrative thing, but I do think that it happens enough for it to be like a recurring gag, like in terms of humor.
It seems to me that they were kind of just taking advantage of the fact that it's a cartoon and doing this kind of absurdist stuff. And that just seemed to be the humor that really tickled them. So they just happened to do it a lot in these early seasons.
I mean, yeah, those early seasons of SpongeBob are like super absurdist. Like a lot of those jokes are super wacky and out there. And honestly, a lot of the time, not really like, I guess like child oriented. They're not like adult jokes that they slipped in, but it doesn't always seem like something a kid would be like, oh, that's funny.
This video does propose a couple explanations to why this occurs, but mostly it's just, here's a bunch of examples of this reoccurring theme of skin removal, wearing skin, disguising yourself as something else, stuff like that. It happens all the time, and here are a bunch of examples. And one of the explanations that the video provides, probably the strongest one, is it points to Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy and how they're the only humans in the show.
Yes.
And they're just like normal, quotations, humans, for the most part, as where everyone else is a sea creature, they're humans.
Yes.
They're elderly superhero humans, but nobody questions them, right? Why is that?
Yeah.
And the theory posits that they're just playing their role just like everyone else. So the show is not, it doesn't take place underwater. Bikini Bottom's not underwater. This is a human society where everybody wears a costume and plays their role. And Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are just doing their thing. Nobody questions them.
I would actually argue that if we are to sort of take this theory at face value and in an attempt to make it work, make it fit the narrative of SpongeBob, I actually feel like the inverse makes much more sense. Rather than, everyone else is actually people wearing fish costumes, I feel like it would make more sense that these were the only two fish that were dressed up as people, hence why they can breathe underwater.
Interesting.
I don't believe that. Because I have seen the episode that has the origin of Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, and I do believe that they once did live above the surface of the ocean. However, if we are to go by the skin theory, then I think it makes much more sense that Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy are also fish wearing human costumes. They're the only people that wear human costumes, and that's the sort of niche that they fill, rather than everyone else but them is wearing a fish costume.
Right. Well, this theory tries to explain things like fire underwater and why everyone in Bikini Bottom follows like human society, like they have jobs and they drive cars and they have human
Yeah.
parallels to every single thing. Like at that point, it's easier to say they're actually humans. And this skin theory
That is true.
backs that up because they're all wearing costumes.
Yeah, there's also multiple instances where a problem could be solved if a fish were to swim upwards,
Right.
but gravity is like very much a thing.
Right.
Like rock bottom, SpongeBob tries to run up the wall, doesn't happen.
It's impressive that he can run up the
Squidward's
wall to
house.
begin with, but still he can't swim.
Yeah, exactly. Or like the really early episode with the bubbles, where Squidward's house gets picked up by a massive bubble. When the bubble pops, what happens to Squidward's house? It falls at fucking 9.8 meters per second squared.
Right.
Like it's not like a slow, floating descent.
I think the Occam's razor solution here is just that this is just a wacky cartoon and
Oh, for sure, yeah.
that's it. Like
That's what it always is.
I don't actually think any of these skin theory explanations are canon.
No.
But they're kind of
I don't think
interesting
a
to think
single one
about.
is.
And I think skin theory in general, just as an observation of trends, is super interesting. And I love this video.
I think that the skin theory video is one of the best like cartoon theory videos because I think that like it generally comes from like a place of like love and respect for the show,
Mhm.
and it really does try its best to like be empirical with its evidence. But like you said, like I mean it's just a cartoon. Cartoon is children's cartoons especially are a medium and a format that sort of leaves room for, visual gags and wacky one-off things that you never see again. So in terms of consistency to the canon, it's pretty much non-existent. There's no consistency in shows like this because there doesn't need to be.
Right.
Yeah. But it's more fun to be like, oh, everyone's wearing skin costumes.
Yeah. I think we saved the best for first because it only gets worse from here.
Nice. Cool. That's a great thing to say.
Next up, we have the Fairly Odd Parents pupil theory. So this theory
Okay.
states that let me make sure I get this straight. Fairy characters are the only ones who have pupils, and human
Yes.
characters do not. And if we look at the image here with an array of human and fairy characters, we notice that trend stays true,
Yes.
except in a few cases, and that's where the theory
Yes.
gets interesting. This theory states that Veronica, Trixie's friend, is actually her fairy because she has pupils. It's an intentional detail, is what this theory claims, that she has pupils. Therefore, she's not a human, she's a fairy.
Okay, so I actually forgot about this one. I had heard it once a while back, but I hadn't heard of it since. I also kind of like this theory because a lot of the time, like, I don't know, when it comes to animation, when it comes to character design, when it comes to art in general, very rarely is somebody making art and some part, like some component or element or detail of the art is unintentional.
Right.
Right? Like, I've never made a song or made a video where, like, a certain lyric was unintentional, or a certain way that I edited my video was just, on a whim unintentional, or I've never done a drawing that was, like, unintentional. So I think a detail like this is actually important. Like, I think it actually kind of holds some weight, because if every single human does not have pupils, and fairies all very intentionally have pupils, there is a reason that Veronica has pupils.
You would think so. You would think that
Yeah.
the artists were very intentional in this, and that they did this on purpose, as kind of a key of fairies have
It
pupils.
depends on how many examples.
Well, yeah, we can point to nearly every character, and they follow this. Veronica, I believe, is the only human who does have pupils that I can think of, at
Really?
least in the main cast that we see here especially. I can't think of side characters who have them. But I can also think of a fairy who does not have pupils, and that's Jorgen von Strangle. Is this theory also implying that Jorgen is not a fairy? Or is this just kind of an inconsistency in the art?
See, I don't know, because Jorgen has proven to be magical.
Right.
Like, to have magic. However, he is the only fairy that looks like that.
He's the buffest of all the fairies, for sure.
Well, I mean, just in terms of proportions,
Yeah.
you know? He's proportioned like a normal person. I guess as normal as a cartoon person could be. So I have a, okay, I'll crack this case wide open. I'm sure there's probably a rule in the rules that prevents like humans from like wishing for magic powers themselves, wish granting powers themselves. But maybe, just maybe, Jorgen sort of subverted and circumvented some sort of rule that prevented from him as a human becoming magical, and he did, and sort of worked his way up to the top. I don't know. that might be something worth looking into, though.
So you believe this theory, and you think it extends to saying that Jorgen is or was a human, and the fact that Veronica has pupils does point to the fact that she is a fairy.
Believe is a strong word, but
you're willing to give credence to that theory.
Yes, actually. Way more than skin theory.
Okay.
Because
really?
skin theory is more of a couple. Skin theory is more of like a cluster of separate theories. But this is pretty direct. This is pretty straightforward.
This is something that we can point to and say, this is true. There is a consistency and a few examples of inconsistency here, but we can't point to really much of anything else to actually support this theory. Like, there isn't really anything that points to Veronica being a fairy or Trixie's fairy at all. Like, we don't see that Trixie's getting everything she wants. I mean, she is popular and all that, but it's not like all of her problems are solved. There's no episode where she has a fairy or has her wishes granted. We also see Veronica has parents. She has her own house that she lives in.
Yeah, you'd think it'd be addressed by some point.
It's never addressed, or it never comes up that Jorgen is or was a human. I mean, you can point to his design and say he looks different. Therefore, that lends credence to him being different from traditional fairies. But that's still just a design thing.
It's realistically, it's probably just a design choice that was overlooked, or I mean, it might have just been overlooked. I did a little bit of research. Other people have pointed out other characters that also do not apply to this rule set.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think once again, kind of going back to Occam's razor. If this was the case, it would have been addressed at any point in this show's multiple season run. And it never was.
Right.
So it just comes down to design, It's
just a design inconsistency.
I think it's a great theory, and it's a detail that is fun to point out. It's just design inconsistency.
I wouldn't say there's much of a theory here. This is similar to skin theory in that it's just an observation of trends.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unless Butch Hartman wants to come out and be like, sure.
Butch Hartman does have a track record of coming out and confirming or denying fan theories.
Yes, and I feel like this would have been addressed at any point.
Maybe
the show's not exactly new.
Yeah, maybe he has addressed this one. I don't know. I didn't get that far. I just want to present the theory and maybe poke some holes in it. Just like the next one here. This is the theory that the twins from Johnny Test and Dee Dee from Dexter's Lab got swapped around at birth, and now they're in the wrong family, basically. Just based on their design and their personality.
I have never heard this one.
Nor had I, so I had to pick it.
Yeah, I've never heard this one.
And this is another interesting design theory.
This one is where we're sort of withdrawing from plausibility. You could make the argument that Dexter has red hair and is also a scientist guy. Johnny Test and Dee Dee, however, are not exactly like, there's nothing that really connects them in terms of personality. And that's kind of what we're going off of with the whole scientist people. But also, these shows did not come out at the same time, which I think is if there was any sort of crossover or theory to like have some sort of credence or plausibility to it, I would have to probably argue that these shows would have to probably come out around the same time for that to be intentional.
Right.
Also, I mean, I guess hair color is like whatever, but like Johnny's got the same color hair as his dad. It's not like everyone but Johnny Test has this sort of sharp orange color.
Yeah, let's take a look at the whole family. So you can see Dexter's dad is blonde, his mom's a redhead. All makes sense there.
Yes.
Johnny's dad is blonde, his mom is a brunette. where is the redheaded Susan and Mary coming from?
I mean, isn't red hair a recessive trait?
Right, that can skip a generation. It's recessive, yes.
Listen, I think this is a fun one to some extent. It's fun to be like, oh, maybe. I think this is so far the one with the least amount of body or evidence to it. I would say.
Yeah, I don't think this theory is ever trying to pretend to be true. Because it just,
I can't imagine.
It doesn't make any sense for either the plots of these shows or whatever. It's just kind of a fun, don't the Test twins look like they actually belong in Dexter's lab based on their design and their glasses and their red hair and their personalities? And doesn't Dee Dee, wouldn't she more fit in with Johnny and his family? And she kind of looks similar. That one's more of a stretch. But it's kind of a fun thing to think about them being swapped in opposite families, and it might actually just work better. The more obvious answer is just that Susan and Mary are just inspired by Dexter.
I mean, yeah, probably.
Like the creator of Johnny Test was like, okay, we're going to have redhead twin sisters, and they're going to have the thick-rimmed glasses and be geniuses. Kind of like that show Dexter's Lab, yeah.
Yeah, it aired on the same network.
Right. All right, next up, there's actually a couple theories revolving around the Flintstones and the Jetsons. So obviously these are both Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yes.
Made by the same studio. And they've even had crossovers, like a crossover movie, in which Elroy attempts to send the family forward into the future with a time machine, and they end up going back in time and meeting the Flintstones. So the crossover is there. It's canonical. But the theory, one of them, is that Elroy's machine actually succeeded in sending them into the future, and the Flintstones exist in a post-apocalyptic future where things have returned to the Stone Age, kind of like a Horizon Zero Dawn situation.
Yeah, this is another theory that, although more than likely not like true at all, has definitely has some things that point towards it being true. Probably the biggest one being that in the town of Bedrock, they have technology that runs on electricity.
Do they?
Yeah, they have televisions and stuff.
Okay.
So I think that this one does sort of have some sort of weight to it, because there are small things in the Flintstones that show that this is not like a realistic depiction of prehistoric times.
Of course.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why, but the number one reason being that they have TVs and shit.
Yeah, I think other people would mostly point to they follow conventional standards that have existed long before them, like they drive cars, and they have the family unit, and they are kind of mimicking society that had existed before. And if this was the first society, where were they getting those ideas from?
Exactly, that it wouldn't make any sense. But with the Jetsons, maybe we can sort of infer that at some point in the great technological advances of the future, at some point they hit a ceiling, because a lot of people kind of assume that the more technologically advanced that we become as a global society, then the less need there is for conflict, because we can meet more humanitarian needs on a global scale to a point where conflict would not naturally arise due to everyone's needs being met. That is kind of the goal. But maybe in the time of the Jetsons, they hit this sort of ceiling of peace, right? And maybe their advancements in technology became so great that they spilled over, and that corruption permeated back through society. And with the newfound powerful technology, they fucking started some sort of warfare apocalypse. And as you said, the people of the Flintstones are in the future after the dust has settled, and they are now doing their best to emulate what once was.
Right.
Fred Flintstone would probably have to be a first generation post-apocalyptic person, right? He's the one that drives the car. He's the one that sort of holds together this family unit. Or maybe it's already been going on for generations, and people have just done a good job at maintaining some semblance of what once was.
Well, an alternate theory about this is that they exist in the same timeline, on different...
Huh?
Yeah, that's right. In different classes, where the rich and powerful live in the sky on their futuristic platforms, while the poor and the underclass live down on the surface in basically Stone Age land.
Yeah, like maybe the natural resources of the world have been exhausted, something. I think that's also a pretty good theory, but how does that, are we just saying the time machine is just non-canonical since you know what I mean?
Sure, I mean, you have to ignore that part in the movie to believe this theory. But it would explain why the Flintstones act the way they do, and why they have the technology that they have, and why they try to emulate the technology that others have.
They all do live in the sky, huh?
Everything's in the sky.
Yeah, everything's in the sky. Shit, I mean, maybe if we ignore the time machine, then maybe we could kind of get the idea that maybe the people left on the ground are the poor class fighting over what's left on a desolate, decrepit Earth.
Or we could just believe that these are just two shows made by Hanna-Barbera that tackle two different family sitcoms in different time periods.
Yeah, pretty convenient though that they're both on the opposite ends, the extremes of the spectrum of time. One takes place in the far future, and the other in the distant past.
Is that convenient?
It's very convenient.
Or is that more a case of, well, we did one, now let's do the other?
That's 100% what it is. That's definitely what it is.
All right, fair enough.
Imagine if it wasn't, though.
Imagine. Wait, that's all we can do. Next up is the Garfield theory. Obviously, okay. I picked this one because we discussed Garfield in episode 1, and we talked about why does Garfield hate Mondays. Well, there's a theory for that.
Wow, that's cool. Get a little bit of callback. Okay, we can return to this topic.
So, it's been theorized that, of course, Garfield, he's unemployed, he's a cat, he doesn't have a job, whatever. That's the same thing as being unemployed. I don't know why I said that twice. But
he's unemployed.
Who cares?
Doesn't have a job.
Who cares if it's Monday? Like, why does he hate Monday? No good reason. He doesn't have a reason to. People have theorized it's because John is employed. And he goes to work on Monday, and Garfield misses him, but he's too proud to say, I miss John. And this is the start of a new week, and I have to be without him, and that sucks. So I hate Mondays. But we have an answer from the creator, Jim Davis's mouth, himself.
Oh, wow. Jim Davis has spoken out on this?
Yes. Now, here is what he says about this theory. Garfield does not have a job. Garfield does not go to school, and every day is the same. Nevertheless, every Monday is just a reminder that his life is the same old, cycling again. And for some reason, even though his life is pretty much the same every day, on Mondays specifically, awful things tend to happen to him physically.
So Monday is a reminder of the existential dread that he faces as a modern house cat living a cyclical life with no change in sight. But then also it sort of almost has this sort of air to it, this aura to it that seems to bring misfortune to the orange cat.
Right, it's like he's got Friday the 13th every Monday.
Yeah, Jim Davis kind of implied that just like, I mean, bad things happen to him physically on Mondays? That's crazy. That's an insane thing to say with no other explanation. That could mean so many things, I feel like.
Maybe he manifests it. You know? He hates Mondays, he's in a bad mood, and then bad things happen to him. I mean, whose fault is that?
I understand the existential dread, as in Monday for most people is the start of a new week. And so it sort of signifies and represents the onward progression of time as a cycle. But the second thing is I have no idea what he even meant by that. Did bad things just happen to him physically?
I mean, Jim Davis got dark with this one.
Mm-hmm. This is the real dark theory. I mean, the first one's kind of cute, though, where it's just like Garfield misses John. That one's cute.
Yeah, that's nice. Why couldn't we just have that one?
Yeah, what the fuck? I thought Jim Davis was going to be like, yeah, that's the case. That's real. But no.
So the Flintstone Apocalypse, this one, and one more that I have coming up are slightly mildly dark.
Nice, okay.
But I didn't get to any terrible, they're all dead kind of theories. Or
yeah, listen, as long as it's not like a they're all dead or they're in a coma, I'm okay with a little bit of edge. I'm okay with a little bit of darkness in my theory.
This one's slightly dark, and it explains a question that we had previously.
Let's hear it.
Well, the question was, why does Garfield hate Mondays?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought you were
But I have
referring to the
another
next
question
one. Yes,
now.
no, yeah.
Why doesn't Garfield hate Sundays? Because that's the real beginning of the week, calendar-wise.
I think that was, I know that, but I mean, most people are off work Sundays. It's the Lord's Day. So
Yeah, but Garfield's
I would
unemployed.
argue,
He doesn't abide by the work week.
but Monday is the start of a work week, which I think kind of is a better representation of the persistent drone of time marching on.
Okay.
I mean, Sunday. I mean, you ever heard of a lazy Monday? No. Heard of a lazy Sunday? Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Ever heard of
Yeah.
a Monday drive? Definitely not.
Ever
heard of an ice cream Monday? I sure haven't.
No.
All right, I've got another theory about a cartoon cat.
Okay, wow. 2 in a row.
So Tom and Jerry, right? Mortal enemies, of course. They're always trying to kill each other. They're always injuring each other. They hate each other's guts.
Yes.
That's what they want us to believe. The theory here states that Tom and Jerry are actually in cahoots. They're best friends.
Yeah, so I'm pretty familiar with this one. The idea that Tom sort of like keeps narrowly catching Jerry in order to sort of like prove himself as an efficient and functional mouser, and in order to not get replaced with a cat that will kill Jerry.
Right, so win-win for both of them.
Yeah, exactly. Tom gets to have food and shelter, and Jerry also gets to have food and shelter while, kind of keeping up this illusion that they're mortal enemies. I think this is another one that I like, that I think is a good one, because I think there's sort of enough sort of this like suspension of disbelief to what we already know, or there's enough wiggle room to be able to be like, yeah, this is probably true. There's been times where their behaviors and attitudes towards each other have been rather amicable.
It's true.
But I do feel like there is just maybe enough evidence to edge out this theory. Like just enough for reality to sort of overtake it. Because, I mean, they're shown in multiple different contexts in which they're kind of an asshole to each other, outside of the sort of predicament of, I need food and shelter. Yeah, I mean, Tom uses him to roll a cigarette. You know what I mean? That's not... I mean, no one was watching him do that shit, apart from a nice little lady cat, but that wasn't, like, to earn his keep,
Well, maybe he knows that Jerry's never going to break the deal because he's got so much to lose that he can get away with this kind of stuff.
Oh, okay.
They can abuse each other as much as they want.
Yeah, if Tom gets kicked out, he moves on, but Jerry...
Yeah, they've both got a lot to lose in this situation, so they can get away with abusing each other as much as they want because they know at the end of the day they're kind of in the same boat.
I think this one's fine. I'm okay with this one being a thing. I think that there's enough to support it, but it's also just one of those things where it's just like, it's probably not intentional. It's fun though. This is a fun one.
This is just one of those nice theories where it gives a tidy explanation for why a show does what it does and why these characters act the way they do and why there's this perpetual cat and mouse game that they play.
Oh, wow. Nice one.
Yes.
Was that on purpose? Was that an intentional jokey that you did there?
It's just kind of an additional layer of theory on top of it to just explain, well, this is why. It's because they're actually friends, and you can believe this in your headcanon, and it just makes the show a little better. So we've got another one about a cartoon animal. It's a different lens that you can view the show through. And this is that Courage the Cowardly Dog. Obviously, he lives in the middle of nowhere. Spooky stuff happens in nowhere. And it's up to Courage to protect his new home. I don't remember the rest of the intro. But but basically, Courage is always coming across weird, spooky monsters and demons and ghosts. And crazy shit's happening.
He's rather cowardly about the whole thing.
He's freaking out. That's his whole thing, of course. Courage the Cowardly Dog.
Yeah.
This theory states that, well, none of the scary monsters are really real, but Courage is just a small dog. He's not very well socialized because he was abandoned as a pup. He's just a cowardly dog. That's his thing, of course. So when he sees something unfamiliar, a new person, anything like that. He views it as being the worst, and he's afraid of it.
Yes. I think that this theory is, I would say, a step below the Tom and Jerry one in terms of plausibility. I think that it's a nice theory, and I do think that it makes sense that, you know, from the eyes of the scared pink dog, you know, anything unknown to him, foreign concepts and you know, new people can seem scary when you're unfamiliar. You know, it takes time to get over the fear of the unknown. However, I can think off the top of my head, I can see episodes in my head where the consequences of the narrative extend beyond the fears of the dog. Yeah, where Eustace or Muriel are both in situations where the consequences for them outside of courage are very real. So I think that this one has some direct evidence against it rather than the theory being just based on lighthearted speculation such as the Tom and Jerry one.
Well, how do we know that Courage is not just misinterpreting what's happening to his owners?
Oh, whatever. I don't... I mean, you're right, to be fair. I mean, that kind of falls in line with him misinterpreting unfamiliar things as threats. I feel like there's been episodes where Muriel has straight up been like, help me, Courage, I am in danger.
Right, and apparently Courage speaks English, so he would understand that.
Yeah. I mean, at the very least, he understands English.
See,
and then he speaks it when they're not around, I think. Kind of like a Toy Story type situation.
I recently rewatched this show after, you know, not having seen it for 15, 20 years.
Nice.
And I was totally under the impression that Courage did not speak English. And I was surprised.
No, he straight up just does.
It was like a Mandela effect kind of thing where I thought, like, what? Courage is like speaks full sentences in the show? And he says phrases in English. Like, I thought he just went, you know, the whole time. But no, he speaks. And that confused me. I thought, what? I don't remember the show being like this.
Oh, yeah. No, he does. He talks. Not to his owners / parents.
Yeah,
but
he talks to the camera, too.
He does.
He breaks the fourth wall.
Yeah, pretty often, actually.
So anyway, this theory is not obviously meant to be literally canon of the show. It's just a fun way to view Courage's perception of the monsters. Next up, here's my other kind of dark one.
Okay.
Not too dark, though.
That's okay.
I don't want to scare anyone away. This is a family show.
Yes.
So this theory says
very family-oriented.
That Andy's parents, Andy from Toy Story, well, his parents are divorced. It's a plot point that's never actually brought up, but all the signs are there, and you just have to read between the lines.
Yeah.
So it's a single mom. You only ever see the mom. There's no dad in the picture. They move from a larger house to a smaller house, apparently. I don't know how they got the square footage of the Toy Story house, but okay. The mom's wedding ring is not there.
They downsize.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Andy is introverted as a kid, and he's emotionally attached to his very masculine toys. He gets a puppy in the second movie. He gets like a big birthday present, which apparently is common in divorces. The parents try to kind of vie for the kid's affection by spoiling him with gifts.
Yes.
So with all the signs being laid out here, what do you think, Mel? Is there credence to this?
I don't think that this is a theory. I think this is just reality. I think from the very beginning, I don't think the movie ever wanted to be like, hey, it's a single mom. His parents are divorced. Like, I don't think it was ever trying to like shout it, scream it from the rooftops. But I think from the very beginning, it was kind of just like, okay, we are doing a thing that fucking nobody has ever done. So let's try to cut corners as much as we can and only have to animate one parent.
Right.
You know, I mean, people get divorced all the time. People with kids get divorced all the time. So it makes sense for them to have one parent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that they were just like, oh, fuck, it's the 90s and we're making a feature-length 3D animated film. Let's not have to animate two parents. You could argue that maybe his father died in some unexplained, inexplicable way.
But that's not relevant to the story.
No, it's not. And I mean, to be fair, neither is the divorce, really. However, as a child of divorce myself, I recognize the signs.
Like, why have Andy have two parents if his parents are not a huge part of the story? But if you can have just his mom fulfill that entire role, why give him a dad?
Exactly, it doesn't make any sense. And honestly, I mean, fucking Andy's really not crazy important to the story. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, he is, but it's about the toys.
Mhm.
It's called Toy Story. It's not called Andy Story.
And Andy's parents or mom only, gets very little screen time in either of the movies. So you think, Mel, that this was a cost-cutting, time-saving kind of thing, and then they just put the additional clues in there without actually explicitly making it a plot point?
I don't know if the additional clues that are listed here were intentional, sort of like hidden nods to the fact that his parents are divorced, but I think initially, due to the conservation of budget, I think from the very beginning it was 100% intentional that like the dad just was never there, and they were divorced. I mean, divorced maybe not even might not even be the right word, but the dad not being there, 100% an intentional thing.
Right. All right, we've got another Disney theory. This one is about the genie and the merchant are the same character.
Okay.
So, these two characters have some similarities, like they're similar facial hair. They're both animated with 4 fingers, as opposed to the other characters. Most importantly, probably, they're both voiced by Robin Williams. And the merchant is the one who sells the lamp. So all of this kind of points to, with their appearances, including the blue robes, being so similar, there are theories that say the merchant is the genie in disguise, or after he's been freed, or the merchant is using the genie story and the entire story of Aladdin to sell the lamp.
I have not heard this one before. However, after being presented with it, it's a pretty good theory, actually. There's a lot of things that actually connect there. On the surface, the biggest one being that they are voiced by the same person. The facial hair is a good nod to it. A lot of the time, if somebody is somebody else, a lot of the time small features like that will be used. The 4 fingers thing is also a pretty good detail as well. I will say, though, I do question the validity of the theory due to the fact that before being freed, the genie does not have autonomy. So I don't know how the extent of his powers, what the extent of his powers would be without a sort of like master, and if he would be able to sort of apparate himself into the appearance of a person to sell the lamp. I don't know how. I don't know if he had the power to do that.
That part of the theory was that he was just a merchant and he was using the fake story of Aladdin and the genie to sell the lamp.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that makes sense, maybe. I don't know. I don't like theories where it's like the whole movie was actually fake.
Yeah, I mean, that's no fun.
But I do like the connections between the merchant and the genie. However, I one time watched, I think it was a video with Billy West, who voices, half the characters on Futurama. But he was talking about how when you do voice acting for a show or for a project or for a movie or for anything like that, they pay you and they book you for up to 3 characters. And then past 3, you have to get paid more. So, like, for example, if they hired Robin Williams to do the voice of Aladdin, did the voice of the genie for Aladdin, and these rules applied, these rules that Billy West was describing applied, then in theory, they would have Robin Williams for 3 voices before they had to pay him an additional fee.
Interesting.
So it makes sense that a character that is in the movie for like a minute and never shows up again, it makes sense that they would give it to an already existing and paid voice actor for the film, rather than bring in a new person, have to hire and pay a whole new person, when somebody else on the film, on the cast, could go ahead and then just do those, 4 or 5 lines to keep budget down.
This one has some plausibility to it. I won't draw any conclusion about what it means, but I mean, there's definitely something there. All right, next up, we've got a Rick and Morty theory. And this one revolves around a plot point in the very first episode.
Okay.
It's about the mega seeds, which Rick is trying to smuggle.
Okay.
And these mega seeds have the side effect of making someone hyper intelligent for a short time. So the theory states that Rick has a dependency on mega seeds, and his hyperintelligence comes from these seeds, and it's not organic, and he is, smuggling these because, well, he needs them constantly. And some people even say that his flask is full of mega seed juice, and he's sipping on this all the time. So it's in the first episode. This is like one of the first things you see in the show is him trying to convince Morty to shove those mega seeds way up into his butthole so that they can get him way over there, because his butthole is way too loose. He's done this too many times. So now Morty's got to do it because he needs these mega seeds. For what purpose?
I've never heard this one either. However, if I had to think of a single instance in the show that maybe disproved this one, which is actually, this is a pretty good theory, actually. But B-U-T. When Rick intentionally lets himself be captured by the Galactic Federation and he is held as a prisoner, he goes without mega seeds, assuming that he was using and abusing. He goes without the mega seeds for a pretty extended period of time while he remains a prisoner of the Galactic Federation. And during his escape, uses his intelligence to escape. So he doesn't appear to be going through any sort of withdrawal. His intelligence doesn't seem to have gone down in any capacity. He's just as smart as he's always been depicted to be. So, I mean, I would imagine that he was probably incarcerated long enough for any sort of mega seed residue to exit his body.
If real life prisoners and inmates can get drugs,
he was pretty much indexed and like filed away. Like, you know what I mean? He wasn't like even in a cell.
You grease a couple palms and you can get whatever you want. There's nothing really that actually supports this. I mean, other than it being a plot point in the very first episode, like part of the establishment of Rick's character. Oh, and then the other point is that when Morty passes out after feeling the withdrawal from mega seeds, he starts drooling, similar to how Rick is constantly drooling.
Yeah, I think that's kind of where people, I think, tend to get caught up in these theories. Is, I mean, maybe you find something substantial, something worth talking about in terms of evidence towards your theory, but I think that a lot of people just kind of don't come to the conclusion that if it was a detail, an intentional part of the plot or story that mattered, it would be addressed. I mean, sure, there's Easter eggs that are never addressed, but something so integral to the main character of the show, at some point, way before now, it would be addressed.
I mean, lots of creators, they love sneaking stuff in. They love making Easter eggs.
That is true.
So who's to say they wouldn't do some kind of sneaky shit like this and make a huge pivotal detail totally unspoken?
This deconstructs and subverts the entirety of Rick's character.
It's true.
Like, Rick's intelligence being inorganic and not being earned or natural, but instead the result of a performance enhancing substance, like that changes literally everything about the entire dynamic of the whole goddamn show.
We've got two big ones to end off here.
Okay.
This one is just the general the Pixar theory that states that every Pixar movie takes place in a shared universe, and even attempts...
Disney just confirmed this for their movies.
Did they?
Yeah, with the new Wish movie, they're like, everything is all canon. So
I'm sure they had to bend over backwards to do that.
Would you believe it or not? They didn't try that hard.
No. So obviously in Pixar movies, there are tons and tons of callbacks and Easter eggs and references to other movies in the franchise. We could point to dozens of them. There's like the Pizza Planet van. That's
everyone knows Pizza Planet.
There's the Luxo ball that appears in all these movies. You see characters from other movies appear, or their likeness will appear, or just fun stuff like that for the audience, because they just want to reward audiences who have keen eyes, and they love this shit. But the theory here is that, well, this isn't just like a fun Easter egg for the audience. This is an actual shared universe. And there's a timeline. And people have hours and hours of video content saying, in this movie, this takes place before here, and this explains that, and everything is connected, and yada, yada, yada. I've been immersed in this.
So this theory actually, I mean, honestly, a lot of this theory can just be supported by the fact that a lot of Pixar movies just take place in the real world.
Mm-hmm.
There's the whole B&L by and large thing between Up and like WALL-E, for example. I know that a lot of people point to that corporation being in both movies as sort of a connection between the movies as like them being in the same universe. But like when you look at Toy Story, when you look at WALL-E, when you look at Up, and when you look at Monsters Inc., like it's really easy to just sort of make the pieces fit and like say that they all exist in the same universe. You know what I mean?
Mm.
But they both take place in a world very familiar to ours. WALL-E takes place in the future, so you could just you could argue that exists just in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And the evidence used is that B&L, the corporation that has the big spaceship on WALL-E, is the corporation that is evicting what's his name? Is it Carl?
It is Carl.
Okay, cool. I mean, fuck, that could be future you, and that's canon. I think this one is pretty bulletproof, except for Cars.
Right. That one's sticky. Because
yeah, that one's hard. That one's tough.
Cars takes place on what appears to be Earth.
Where would the cars come from? Okay, humans are gone. Nice. The cars that were left behind are just like, all right, we're alive now.
I heard that
they feel and love.
They were a product of B&L.
Yeah, I think that there's nothing you can say that will convince me that Cars like takes place in the same universe as Monsters.
And there are lots of movies where animals can speak or they're human-like, and then in other movies they have the same animals that just act like animals. So if these take place in the same universe, where's the consistency?
Yeah, I think it's easy to assume that, like, let's say Toy Story and Up, for example. It's easy to assume that these both just take place in, like, the real world, and toys just can fucking do that shit. They can just talk. They just do that. And, it's safe to assume that WALL-E comes after both of those movies because that's the future. The future could be anything.
Sure.
It's plausible that we fucked up Earth and we left. Monsters Inc. you could even make an argument for because the monsters only appear to kids, and what happens in the real world all the time. I'm scared of the monster under my bed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm scared of the monster in my closet. Like, I saw this, I saw that. Like, you could make an argument for that.
It's just a matter of people looking at all the Easter eggs and trying to assign too much meaning to them. Exactly.
Easter eggs are fun, but people will get too worked up over the, whether or not they kind of like imply this greater canon.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it's just like fun shit that the animators did. That's it.
Yeah, it's just fan service.
Yeah, so my headcanon is just that Woody is Andy's dad.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere along the way, brother got turned into a toy. I don't know.
Wow.
And nobody can tell me I'm wrong. Because toys can talk, so there must have been people at some point, because people could talk.
Maybe Andy's dad died and his soul got like resurrected into the toy.
Exactly.
Now he's a man living amongst the toy world.
Yeah, and that's why Andy cares. I mean, that's why Woody cares so much for Andy.
Right.
Because it actually is Tom Hanks was his dad.
Tom Hanks was Andy's dad.
Tom Hanks is. Yeah, but now it's Woody.
And he can't reveal to anyone that I was an actor as a human.
Yeah, I was Tom Hanks.
Andy Hanks, huh?
Have you ever seen human Tom Hanks in those movies? No.
Absolutely not.
Nowhere to be seen.
That's fair enough, Mel. I can't really disprove that.
All I'm going to say. All right,
this will be our last one. And this one is kind of a curveball. This is the 2007 Boston Moonanite Panic.
I have no idea what this is.
Okay. This is a case of, let's call it mass hysteria. Or an overreaction.
I'm a big fan.
Which revolves around a cartoon character. So, in 2007, there was a guerrilla marketing campaign for the Aqua Teen Hunger Force movie. And part of this campaign was putting up these little LED signs of the Moonanites just around the city. They did this in multiple cities, kind of just off the books. They hoped that it would kind of pick up traction. The news might pick it up. People might see these and say, oh, isn't that the Moonanite from Aqua Teen? And, that's what guerrilla marketing does. They don't spend a lot of money in it. It's something kind of simple. So in the city of Boston, this became a real concern because people started calling them in and saying there's some kind of flashing device near this bridge or on this building. This could be a bomb. And the Massachusetts State Police Department and the bomb squad and other first responders, they all hopped on this. Parts of the city were closed down for hours at a time. They did like a controlled demolition of one of these things because they could not be sure that this was not a bomb. People were calling these things in. This is a big problem. They spent tons of time and money addressing these LED signs of Aqua Teen Hunger Force Mooninites flipping the bird.
This is insane. I have to look this up.
So they put up these...
Oh, that's what they looked like?
Yeah, they put up these advertisements all over the country in a bunch of different cities. No problem. Not a problem anywhere else. Boston, however, they did not take kindly to this.
Yeah, I feel like this is like super obviously not a big deal or something to worry about at all.
Apparently there was just high tension at the time around terrorist attacks. I mean, it's 2007, 6 years after 9/11.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of activity recently around that time, so I think...
They arrested 2 people.
Yes. Those may have been the people who put them up.
Yes, they were 2 men hired to put them up. Yeah, a lot of people apparently gave the Boston Police Department a lot of shit for this. Like, they were making fun of them relentlessly.
Well deserved. I mean, nobody else seemed to react like this. I mean, it's got a blinking light. It's unidentified. Could be a bomb. But it also could just be a blinking sign. An LED display.
It looks like a light bright.
Yeah, it's a light bright. It's a high-tech light bright.
Oh my god. February 27th, 2007... 1 month after the incident, the Boston Police Bomb Squad detonated another suspected bomb, which turned out to be a city-owned traffic counter.
A little bit of incompetence going on here.
They're just... Everything's a bomb to these guys.
Yeah?
I mean, yeah, this happened in 10 cities, and
right.
Boston was just not happy.
Bridges and highways were shut down over Mooninites.
That's so good.
This is like some real-life alien invasion. I'm Carl.
I'm Mel.
This has been The Long Couch. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode on Tuesday. Bye.
Bye-bye.